Save Mount Diablo knows a lot about fires. Co-founder Mary Bowerman was a fire ecology expert. Her classic Guide to the Mountain's Flora chronicled the healthy recovery after the big fires in 1931 and 1977. Later, Save Mount Diablo documented the aftermath of a 2013 blaze in Mount Diablo State Park. Through its newly launched Mary Bowerman Science and Research Program, the organization made grants to scientists studying fire recovery and hosted a yearly colloquium to share their findings. Within weeks after the Morgan fire, shrubs and trees had resprouted. Flowers popped up that hadn't been seen in the Mount Diablo area for 40, 80, even 125 years. Unusual amphibians, such as red-legged frogs and tiger salamanders, survived and were thriving. Botanists cataloged a rich seed bank of rare species beneath once impenetrable stands of chaparral. 16 insects were added to the list of animals known to live on the mountain. Park visitors raved about the size and abundance of the wildflowers. But the Santa Clara Unit Lightning Complex fire was a different beast. It burned from mid-August to early October and spread from the southeastern flanks of Mount Diablo to Mount Hamilton and Henry W. Coe State Park and beyond. That made it 120 times bigger than the 2013 fire we'd studied. Would the size of the fire make its effects more severe? In this new age of megafires, no one knew for sure what the outcome would be. Save Mount Diablo's reporting team headed to the ashes closest to our homes. The area firefighters called the Deer Zone of the SCU fire. It included parts of Morgan Territory Regional Preserve, Round Valley Regional Preserve, and Los Vaqueros watershed. These parks were a bit off the beaten path with an intriguing mix of species found both along the coast and in the Central Valley. If we wanted to see a Lewis's woodpecker or a bald eagle, we went to Los Vaqueros. For a golden eagle or a phainopepla, the remote grasslands of Round Valley. For muscular manzanitas, tenacious blue oaks, and ridges with some of the best views in the East Bay, we went to Morgan Territory. In the early weeks after the fire, the scene in all three Deer Zone parks was dramatic. Grasslands were black. Some trees had toppled. The ones still standing were the perfect backdrop for a dystopian movie. The steep east-facing slopes of Morgan Territory and Los Vaqueros were almost completely bare, revealing slabs of sedimentary rock laid down when the Central Valley was covered by water, part of what geologists call the Great Valley Group.
Well, the first thing that's obvious when you reach this spot is how extensive the fire was and how hot it probably burned. This was mostly chaparral, hiding all the rock structures and rock outcrops underneath.
The recovery wasn't as fast as the one we'd witnessed in 2013. What had taken weeks back then was taking months this time. But by the spring of 2021, trees and shrubs were sprouting from their bases. Grasslands had turned green. Familiar ferns and flowering plants poked up from blackened soil. Though some oaks stayed brown for many months, botanist Heath Bartosh told us that most of them would survive. Evergreen or live oaks make a comeback by sprouting from their root crowns, while blue oaks and other deciduous oaks that lose their leaves each year often make their comeback via epicormic sprouting on trunks and limbs. The dominant oak species in all these parks, the blue oak, is especially tough. It grows only in California, mostly on hot, dry sites that encircle the Central Valley. With roots that can snake down 80 feet, it's the state's most drought-tolerant deciduous oak. Above ground, it moves slowly. It can take 10 to 30 years for a blue oak to reach a height of 4.5 feet. After a fire, blue oaks that look dead for years can sometimes revive. The prognosis for the deer zone shrublands or chaparral was also good. So long as chaparral isn't burned too often, it likes hot fires and responds with a parade of different plants.
These rocky areas are refugia. The grasslands here might get plowed up by the feral pigs and the wildflowers affected, or maybe the ethereal spear are thick here because Indians replanted the bulbs in various kinds of ways. But the rocky areas, those are the treasure chests.
In Morgan Territory's chaparral, bulb plants popped up right away, with the common star lily leading the parade. Then along came Mount Diablo globe lilies, which are found nowhere else on the planet except on and around their namesake peak. Energy stored underground in bulb plants like these enable them to pop up before plants that regenerate from seeds, taking advantage of the extra space and nutrients provided by the fire. For anyone who likes plants, it's a thrilling time of what Bartosz calls fleeting abundance. Each spring, Save Mount Diablo stages events in which scientists record every species of plant and animal they can find in a defined area over 24 hours. These events are called bio-blitzes. For 3 years after the 2013 fire, the organization focused its bio-blitzes on burned landscapes in Mount Diablo State Park. After the much larger 2020 fire, it expanded the effort to include more people in more places, from Morgan Territory to Henry Coe State Park. But this time there was a wrinkle. The global pandemic had shut down California, and events everywhere were canceled, so Save Mount Diablo designed dispersed, longer-lasting bio-blitzes where people went out alone and recorded species on the nature app iNaturalist. By the fall of 2023, 17,300 observations of 1,700 species by more than 780 observers painted a detailed and heartwarming picture of fire recovery in the Diablo Range. Perhaps the most notable observation was made in the first spring, in 2021, when a Save Mount Diablo staff team spotted thousands of fire poppies in Morgan Territory. Rainfall totals had been only 20 to 30% of normal that year, but the fire poppies didn't seem to mind. It was the first ever recorded sighting of fire poppies in the preserve. Later, fire poppies were found elsewhere in the deer zone, but according to iNaturalist, nowhere else in the SCU fire footprint. Fire poppies resemble wind poppies without the purplish center. Botanists call them fire followers, which means their seeds can rest in the soil for decades, waiting for heat or smoke from fire to stimulate germination. The stewardship team saw 2 other notable fire-following plants too: whispering bells, low to the ground, and golden eardrops, which were waist to head high in some places. It was pretty remarkable. These species seeds had been waiting underground since the last Morgan Territory fire, which may have occurred around 1945 or even earlier. For a few years, they'd be visible to anyone curious enough to wander around in the ashes. And those of us on the Diablo Range Reveal team were more curious than ever. We were becoming fire followers too. If you love wide open spaces, Morgan Territory should definitely be on your bucket list. Some hikers say it's their favorite East Bay Regional Park. To find out why, check out our online guide to Morgan Territory. Then head up to the staging area and follow the route marked in yellow on this map. It's good for views, plants, and wildlife. So good, in fact. It was photographer Bob Walker's favorite Morgan Territory hike. To see how the fire recovery is going, veer off onto the Valley View Trail, marked in orange. Maps of the preserve are available at the staging area or on the East Bay Regional Park District website.